This week's 1044 is brought to you by Chevron Delos 600 ADF Ultra Low Ash Diesel Engine Oil. It's time to kick some ash.
With the trucking industry continually moving toward electric road tractors, what about terminal tractors?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the 1044, a weekly webisode from the editors here at CCJ. I'm Jason Cannon, and my co-host on the other side is Matt Cole. Major truck OEMs have made a lot of strides in recent years toward the electrification of the Class 8 truck. While electrifying a portion of their Class 8 truck production is going to go a long way toward reaching environmental goals, there's still a large part of the trucking pie that can be tackled with electrification.
At larger fleets, terminal tractors often run 24/7, 365, or close to it. Even at smaller operations, terminal tractors are running almost constantly for multiple shifts a day. We spoke with Kurt Neitkens, co-founder, president, and chief technology officer of RNGV, who talked about the development and capabilities of the company's electric terminal tractors.
My whole philosophy behind this was that it's got to be a vehicle that has a pull, not a push. So people want this because it's better than an alternative, and therefore they want to go electric. And financially better is one of the most important things. So that's where I started. I didn't really know what terminal tractors were. I went to a math model of every vehicle I could imagine. I went all the way from, personal fishing boats to Class 8 trucks. And I didn't do any airplanes, but I thought about it, but I knew that was out of my realm of influence. So had given up, frankly, said, I don't know if I have a vehicle I can do this with. Was driving to work one day and saw a yard hostler and said, hey, what is that? And so did the numbers and learned about the truck and realized it was the perfect vehicle for electric in a number of ways. It has so much pollution that it creates. They run 24/7. The emissions equipment on them are terrible. That wasn't really designed for a yard hostler. They're kind of just a really dirty vehicle. And yet, because they're pulling heavy weights and they're moving around a yard and they're running 24/7, they really put out a lot of emissions. But also, it means the payback is really good for electric because you're going from a 15% efficiency powertrain to a 90% efficiency powertrain. And you're buying fuel from people who are making billions on them a year, ExxonMobil types, to you're buying fuel from a power plant that isn't really making a lot of money on on the power. So, and efficiency is much higher to make electricity than it is to make, power on a diesel engine. So those things all come together, and that allows us to really provide something special for the customer. It's really better in every way than a diesel, than the competitor. And so, some of that's our design, but some of it's just inherently we have an advantage. So I'll take that advantage, especially when it helps the environment.
RNGV made its first electric yard truck in 2015, which was a remanufactured out-of-service diesel terminal tractor. The company now sells both remans, in which a new powertrain is placed into an existing chassis, as well as its own terminal tractors.
Our first year, and in fact, the very first truck we built was a remanufactured truck. So we took a diesel that was out there. We actually found one in the weeds with a blown engine and said, let's tear it all apart and put it back together. So we had the first truck running with 5 people in the company. And so we really did that with a very small team. And we did use the chassis. One of the things we were trying to do is make sure the adoption curve was as fast as possible. So we went out and said, how do we get started with the least amount of capital, but also how do we get our customers to accept it more quickly? And these vehicles, even in the Class 8 space, are the hardest working vehicle out there. They have more impacts when they run into trailers, and they get worked harder than any other Class 8 truck out there. And so having the customer say, hey, I understand that the frame's going to live. I understand that the cab's going to live. I understand that I'm only worrying about the powertrain when I buy this vehicle was a big consideration for us. So we didn't have to prove the whole vehicle. And also we didn't have to necessarily design the whole vehicle. So we got them running with the first year we did first 2 years we did all remans. And then after that, we started doing all new from the ground up. And so we do both now. And that's a really, environmentally, it's a great answer for us, because now we can reduce that environmental footprint for those, the frame, the cab, the front axle. We reuse those things. But we sandblast them and repaint them. And so they're really they go down the same production line as our brand new trucks. So when they come off the line, you can't tell a difference. You don't know. You can't tell whether one's reman or new. It just is. And we give them a $45,000 discount to do it that way. And so they get to provide the truck, but then our costs are significant, or their costs are significantly less. Ours too, right? That's why we can pass that on to our customers. And it's in our mind, it's a way to multiply our impact, reduce our footprint for our customers. You don't have to smelt that steel and reform those parts. And so we think that's an important aspect of what we can do. And it allows us to convert fleets that are out there already in a different way.
The nature of the work yard tractors do leads to a lot of wear and tear on their transmissions, as the drivers are always shifting from drive to reverse as quickly as possible. Kurt explains, however, that problem goes away with RNGV's tractors, as they don't have a transmission. But before we hear more from Kurt, let's hear from 1044 sponsor, Chevron Lubricants.
Protecting your diesel engine and its aftertreatment system has traditionally been a double-edged sword. The same engine oil that is so essential to protecting your engine's internal parts is also responsible for 90% of the ash that is clogging up your DPF and upping your fuel and maintenance costs. Outdated industry thinking still sees a trade-off between engine and emission system protection, and Chevron was tired of it. So they spent a decade of R&D developing a no-compromise formulation. Chevron Lubricants developed a new ultra-low ash diesel engine oil that is specifically designed to combat DPF ash clogging. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology cuts sulfate ash by a whopping 60%, which reduces the rate of DPF clogging and extends DPF service life by 2.5 times. And just think what you can do with all the MPGs you're going to add from cutting your number of regens. But Delo 600 ADF isn't just about aftertreatment. It provides complete protection, extending drain intervals by preventing oil breakdown. Before, you had to choose between protecting your engine or your aftertreatment system, and now you don't. 600 ADF from Delo with OmniMax technology, it's time to kick some ash.
The powertrain itself is really, you think about it as the batteries, the controllers, and the motor. Of course, you still have a rear axle, at least in our system, you still have a rear axle. It's kind of a T-shaped powertrain. So you got the motor through a drive shaft into the rear axle. We don't have a transmission. It's one of the benefits of going electric. You see that in other vehicles, but we really pushed that to make sure that we wouldn't need a transmission in this space. Now, there are some spaces where it still makes sense to have a transmission with an electric motor. And there's a couple of ways to do that. So, those are all cost and power and speed trade-offs and that kind of discussion. But in our case, what we want to do is make sure that our vehicle was as simple as possible. We could think of it as elegantly simple. And so we don't have a transmission in it. We have a two-gear reduction in the axle, so a double reduction axle. We don't have coolant on the truck, so there's no radiator, there's no hoses. Taking those full systems out makes a big difference in the reliability of the vehicle. And these are mission critical vehicles. And so our customers, when one of these goes down, it affects their operations. When they're buying diesels, almost nobody has one, because they go down so often that they always have two. There's always a backup. And if they have 5, they have 2 backups. And at least in the diesel world. Now, the diesel uptime is around 75%. So 25% of the time, that truck is not ready to go. And our trucks right now are, especially the ones we've built over the last 2 years. So we've been in production for 6 years, or almost 7 years now. I guess we started in 2015. We released our first truck. But our uptime is more closer to 98, 99%. So that's just an astronomical difference. One of the things that happens on the current diesel trucks is the operators are going forward and back so much that they will, before they stop, they'll throw it in reverse or forward, back and forth. and they're eating up the transmission and the rear axle because they're bang, 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 right? So one of the things I love to do with people when they come for a drive is I have them driving along and they're doing, I say, get up to 10 miles an hour, and then I hit reverse, and the truck slows down, and then starts going backwards. And that does not hurt a thing because the electric motor will slow itself down with regen braking, comes to a stop, and it has to come to a stop because it's the motor, right? So then it starts going the other direction. Then you start going reverse. And so it's that simple. There is no shifting. There's no gear set. Nothing changes. It's just the motor, and the magnetics change direction. And so they start pulling the motor the other direction. And it's all literally magnetic fields in a motor that make that rotor go around.
When designing their trucks, RNGV talked to terminal tractor drivers about their biggest wants and needs in a new design. And Kurt says the biggest request had to do with the pedals.
We have a little bit, a different feel to the truck because there's no transmission. So it's a lot smoother. We have one pedal driving, so it's in a lot more. You have a lot more control. In the diesel world, many of the operators and customers will actually weld a second brake pedal onto the brake pedal system. And they do that so they can use both feet at the same time. So if they're backing a trailer into the building, they don't want to hit it really hard. And it's hard to control that back and forth. So they try and squeeze the brakes while they're pushing the accelerator pedal and kind of slide it into the building. With our one pedal operation, I don't know if you've driven many electric vehicles, but a lot of them now are doing that. And so the accelerator pedal is also the decelerator pedal. Now we still have a brake system that's there, but because we have regen braking on the accelerator pedal, and we have it's pretty aggressive on our vehicle, you can complete stop with 80,000 pounds with that pedal. You never use the brakes. And so, and if you watch these guys, some of them never stop. I mean, it's amazing how quick they are and how smooth they are and how well they drive these trucks, even the diesels. I mean, it's truly, it's art, right? And so, but what's number one thing our drivers, when we did our surveys, when we first brought out the first vehicles and let people drive them for the first time, we did surveys, and the number one feature on the truck was the one pedal driving. The control you have with that is beyond anything they've ever had before. So there's not this looseness. And because we have a transmission, there's almost no lash in the powertrain. So we get really smooth and can just squeeze up to a building without running into it. You never have to squeeze the brakes. And so that's really nice.
Without the many parts that go into a diesel engine, Kurt says the maintenance on electric terminal tractors is simpler and much cheaper, which plays a big role in the return on investment.
No fuel filters, the biggest maintenance that these guys have on the diesels is really the exhaust system and the catalyst and that kind of stuff. But there's engine oil changes and stuff. For our system, because we're air cooled, there's some air filters that we change for our air cooling. We still have hydraulics on the truck, so there's a hydraulic filter, the screw-on filter that we change. And then there are grease fittings, grease zerks on the truck for the moving parts, bushings and that kind of thing. We sell with a auto luber, so if you want to get one of those, it's an option. So you don't have to do that as part of your maintenance. You still have to fill the auto luber with lube, right? That would be your maintenance. But if you don't have that, you have that. And then it's really just a typical systems checks, right? A lot of times in a maintenance schedule, you want to make sure everything's working. So you slide the door back and forth, and you make sure all the parts are, the brakes working correctly, all that kind of stuff. So really, it's a 1 hour, 1.5 hour event that a driver could do. I mean, and we train our customers to do that. We'll do it for them if they want us to. One of the things we do that I think is special, and again, we've done to improve the conversion and get more of these trucks out there, is we have our own service team across the country. And they're local, and they have mobile service vans, and they come to the customer. Again, something that's pretty special. Others in the industry kind of do some of these things, not other OEMs. But so we go to the customer, fix the truck. We have telematics on every one of our trucks, so we can tell how it's running. We've got all kinds of information coming back to us, and we share a bunch of that information with our customers so they can see when the truck was on, how long it ran, how much it saved, how much fuel it saved, when they're using it, temperatures, the motor, and the batteries, all that kind of stuff we can look at. And so we know a lot about our trucks. It's one of the reasons why our uptime is so good. But we can go out and fix it for them, or we can teach them how to do it themselves. We'll do either one, whatever they'd like.
One of the biggest concerns with electric road tractors is runtime. How long can the thing run on a single charge? Kurt says it's possible with RNGV's trucks, if the drivers maximize their brake time with charging, that no productivity time would be lost due to the charging needs of the tractor.
They have to fill their tank. If they're running 24/7, it's 2 to 3 times a day, or a day. So about once a shift if they're running really hard, maybe a little less than that. A lot of our customers, if they're not a bigger operation, they actually have to drive their vehicles off-site, get fuel, and then come back. And so you add that up together, and it can be an hour, a shift. And even if you have fuel on site, if you've got 10 trucks, they're in a line at the beginning of the shift. So that last guy has to wait till everybody else gets their fuel before he can, right? And doesn't have to. He could be out there working. Obviously there's a management discussion there, but there's time involved in fueling your diesel. On our electrics, there's 0 operational time loss. So we only need to charge when the operator, the driver, is on break. So he gets his half-hour lunch, he gets 2 15 minutes, and there's a little bit of time between shifts. If we plug in during that time, we've got different charger levels. So we wouldn't sell a fast charger to someone who has a single shift or a 2-shift operation, typically. But a 3-shift, 24/7, then they might want to go with the fast charger if they're really working hard. And then even in that case, they can charge their truck only while they're on their break and run 24/7, 365, and never have a down minute to fuel their truck. So that is, think of it an hour a day minimum, right? That's a lot of operational time.
The other big question about electric trucks is the cost compared to their diesel counterparts. Like an electric road tractor, the initial cost of an electric terminal tractor is higher, but Kurt explains that cost is quickly recovered in fuel and maintenance savings.
So that upfront cost is more expensive. We think of it as you're buying your fuel when you buy the truck in a lot of ways. And so, because you're buying these great big battery systems. And so we sell our trucks anywhere, the diesels, let me start with the diesels, somewhere around 135,000. It's moving up a little bit with the emissions equipment stuff. So call it 125 to 145, but I think on average about 135. Our base truck, and I talked about the reman earlier, as a reman is under 200,000. Okay. And then we go all the way up to 284, 950. So we have different versions with different size battery packs and different charging rates. And so we change during that. And then also on top of that 284, 950, if you want to do a fast charge, there is an additional cost for the charger. The biggest thing, again, is that cost savings and that payback for the customer. Now, that's not really a driver thing. That's a customer thing. But, of course, you've got multiple kind of different people in the organization that you're selling to that have different priorities. And so we want to make sure we match all those. We want to make sure we're better for service, which we are. Our maintenance is, we've been told by one customer they can do 6 of our trucks for the maintenance in the time they do 1 diesel. So, that's amazing, right? And so, but then also just the driving cost, the cost that you running the truck every day. If someone's running 24/7 and they are running 7 days a week and they're running hard, they can save up to $90,000 a year in fuel and maintenance alone. Hard savings. This isn't esoteric, hey, drivers like it better, so retention, which is real also, but that's harder to quantify. We're talking about, really dollars going out the door. We can save up to $90,000 a year.
That's it for this week's 1044. You can read more on ccjdigital.com, and as always, you can find the 1044 each week on CCJ's YouTube channel. And if you've got questions, comments, criticisms, or feedback, please hit us up at 1044trucking@gmail.com or give us a call at 404-491-1380. And until next week, everybody stay safe.